good.
I don't know, I saw nothing.
I really don't like this. I'm really disappointed, I have to say. Hoffentlich.
A very well welcome to Capital Sports 3.0. I will be your co-host for this evening, Alan Moore, and my name is Alan Moore, and I'm your co-host for this evening. There you go. Jurgen Klopp, we said he's for the shop. We said that many months ago. We predicted it, we explained why, we went through it. It's going to happen. It's happening now. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And in many ways, we can't feel sorry for the man, but in other ways, well, you know what? He gets paid an awful lot of money and his time is up. The club are unstable. He's feeling that and he wants out in a hurry. And there you go. We'll discuss that now in just one moment. What else have we got in the show? Well, there's quite a bit coming up because, of course, Conor McGregor is getting back into the ring. He's going to be coming back. Well, who knows when? Dana White does not know when he's going to come back, when it's going to be a fight, but he will have a fight. Of course, there's been rugby this weekend, the Six Nations, the biggest rugby tournament in the world, even regardless of the Rugby World Cup. Once Ireland win that, then we're all very, very happy. It was a great day for the Scots. There wasn't a haggis left dry in Scotland yesterday. There wasn't a sheep bothered in Wales yesterday because they were busy crying over a loss to Ireland, but we'll go into that in just one moment. And what else do we have? Well, look, what does it take to offer a replay? At what point do teams, do managers, do players, do administrators, do organizations, federations basically say, do you know what? We have to give a replay because that's the fairest and most decent thing to do. It shouldn't have to go through appeals or tribunals or anybody else. The two groups should come together. The manager who got the win in the end, for example, should say, do you know what? There's something not quite right. That wasn't sporting. Let's go again. A little bit of Wenger, we should say. And what else? Well, of course, the Olympic scandal is rumbling on, and also Nick Kyrgios, he got away with quite a bit this past week, and we'll discuss that as well. Right, so straight away I'm going to bring in my co-hosts, the wonderful and lovely Andrew Flint and the ever-present and brilliant and intelligent Iseult Coley. There you go. I switched it around. I actually read it in the wrong direction.
I knew which introduction Iseult wanted there. Don't worry, Iseult. I would have swapped them round if it was up to me.
So listen, straight away, congratulations, Iseult. Terrific for Spurs, bouncing back in good Alan Partridge fashion, up now into, well, fifth in the table, hanging on in fifth, I should say, hanging on to the coattails of, or I should say the Jalaba, the cloak of Newcastle United. Manchester United, of course, are doing very, very well. They are sliding up the table. They're in third place. Man City in second, of course, Arsenal in first. But I'm going to start off with the one that really shook up a lot of people this weekend, and especially Liverpool fans. They're starting to see a side of Jurgen Klopp, and even Liverpool fans are defending and saying, well, listen, there's nothing that went on in that press interview today or that media conference today that Alex Ferguson didn't do in every single blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's like whataboutery. And it's not even saying what about whataboutery. This is just covering up for bad behaviour. So we said that Klopp was a goner. He'd be gone by the summer. It looks like we're getting it right again.
It feels like the Liverpool side have just... they hit the highs they did in the last 2 years, and I suppose have been the team who have up until this season been either beating City or at least pushing it up to City continually. And I don't know what is after happening in the background, because Jurgen Klopp strikes me as a very frustrated manager, and I appreciate, obviously he's paid for what he does, but I think it can be extremely difficult when you see a man like I personally am not a big fan of his, just not my type of manager, but it can be extremely difficult when you see a manager who he had all the same ingredients largely to be so successful. And it really, to me, I don't think a manager loses their touch so much as something in the background is really preventing them from using the same players to do the same thing we know they're capable of doing. And some of the Liverpool players have just fallen off a cliff edge, and it must be incredibly frustrating to know the talent they potentially have and not be able to garner it. But I think you're reaching the stage now as a fan, and maybe Liverpool fans can't see it in the same way as a Spurs fan. We've had, and look, Andrew's in the same boat as a United fan. Over the last number of years, there have been a lot of coaches. There have been a lot of changes, and there have been times when fans have turned on people. And I don't think at any point, with the exception from a Spurs point of view, the only manager we never really turned on properly was Poch, because we blamed Daniel Levy. We never blamed Poch. And I think in the same way that Man United fans never turned on Alex Ferguson if they hit a stumbling block period. I think Liverpool fans, to an extent, have been blinded to anything other than Klopp is magic. And now you have to go, is very wrong in Liverpool. And I don't think Klopp, a man who loves success, understandably, because he's very good at what he does, is going to want to hang around if this is going to be a downward crest where they're no longer the team competing with City. They're the team now who are further and further down the line. And it smacks of a very angry and uncomfortable place to be at the moment for him. And he's a serial winner.
Yeah, look, there's no two ways about it. This guy, like, as I said, like, I met him many years ago in Germany, because it's over 20 years ago now. And then he was still playing, and he come to the end of his career, and then he was finished his career. He was in charge of Mainz. This guy wants to win, knows how to win. Doesn't need a whole lot of money to do it as well at a certain level, but then he starts to get players through. He relies, Liverpool is a different beast, because he did lose a lot of money for the club. They won lots of they won Champions League and Premier League and so on, but he spent a lot of money to do it in Liverpool. And I think that the owners, the American owners, and this is what we want to you, Andrew, the American owners don't understand that basically, this isn't a closed system. This isn't a little, fixed rigged league where, if you are crap this season, you suddenly get a good player the next, and there's salary caps. I think the Americans have been scared, and that's why Klopp realizes, and this is one of the reasons I gave in last year, why he'd be gone by now, is because, he hasn't been given an open checkbook. The same has happened in Borussia Dortmund. That's why he ran away.
Well, we've heard him say for a number of years, and it is actually, to be fair, a common refrain of virtually every single manager, other than Pep Guardiola, arguably. I've not been given enough. I've not been given enough. But we've been given this ringing series of excuses from Jurgen Klopp. I would actually defend him just for a moment here, though. I think the point you make about the American owners, about the backing, it's not about the backing of the players. I actually think is the major problem. It's the efficiency with which they're identifying talent. Liverpool, for me, over the last few years have been, I would say, up until about a year or two ago, were virtually the standard bearers of just producing value in the transfer market. The number of backroom staff who have left, the number of backroom staff who have become more prominent and vocal, I think is the real problem here, because the way they've brought in players, the Cody Gakpo, for example, after he's clearly a very talented player, and he was on the verge of joining Manchester United, if we are led to believe reports. And that was before the World Cup. Then he had his impressive tournament there. It's not exactly the player that Liverpool needed. I mean, even somebody with a passing judgment of the Premier League, who's only watched the odd game or two, knows Liverpool need midfielders. Naby Keita transfer saga of a few years ago from Leipzig, that was seen as like a major building block, and he just simply hasn't worked. You've got the likes of this Stefan Bajcetic. I can't quite get his pronunciation right. I apologise, but he's doing brilliantly. But he's still only a teenager. You've got Harvey Elliott, who's been at the club for a few years now, but is still very young. And they're still relying on the likes of Jordan Henderson and James Milner to fill in a three-man midfield. But they're not. Jordan Henderson can do a job, fine, but he needs more mobile players alongside him. They're not identifying talent in the right way. Klopp needs support network, like any manager does, really. So I don't think Klopp is the problem. He's going to attract the attention. The press conference where he's just lost his marbles. He's just exposed himself completely, and he's in a mentally fragile state. I don't think that means he is washed up as a manager. I think he needs to move on from Liverpool. I think he needs to move on from Liverpool. A lot of Liverpool fans say possibly now, and I've seen a lot starting to question whether he's the right man for the job. I'd say that it's the wrong job for Jurgen Klopp. He is a brilliant manager and a motivator. We saw how he connected with the Liverpool fan base, unlike most managers have managed almost anywhere. I don't think Klopp's a problem. I mean, yes, recently it grabs the headline saying, "Oh, Klopp lost it having a go at James Pearce, who's a long-standing Liverpudlian journalist. It's not like he's some hack on the up and wants to get a soundbite. And the problem is his support network, and the buck stops with the providers of the buck itself. For me, it's the owners who are starting to be the problem.
Alan, you are on mute, but it's okay. We'll just talk away. Talk amongst yourselves.
It's better on mute. I sound much better. I would go further than that. I'd also say as well, stability is absolute crap for day-to-day sports media. Okay, they don't need it. They don't want it. They can't stand it. Why? What's there to write about when the team is winning? When everyone's happy, there's no scandals coming out. There's no, boys. Pardon?
Mediocrity sells nothing. No.
Exactly. And excellence. I'll go further and say excellence sells nothing, because when Man City were like whipping everyone in the league, when Liverpool win the league, the big scandals, which were then covered up very, very quickly, were Man City players breaking COVID lockdown rules to go bring prostitutes to their houses, or players breaking so that sells. So the fact that even club, they're dropping down the table, that's great for media. And I'm going to play that clip as Andrew brought up by James Pearce. So a question was asked. This is like a Liverpool fan. Now he's a journalist. He's a long-standing journalist, but he's also a fan. You can't be a fan of journalists. I'm sorry. That's the first no-no. If you can't separate that, I have for many, many years, and I know something that, for example, when we work with Lokomotiv Moscow, I had hassle over because people said, "Why you slam the club? You're a fan." I'm going, "No, I'm not a fan of the club." I would never report on the club that I love, whether it be Dundalk or Bologna or West Ham, simply because you need distance.
You can want to see a club do well without being a fan, and I think that's the line that needs to be told if you're going to try and report on someone. Exactly,
and I'm going to just play a short bit of the clip of this interaction, this exchange in the conference, or the media conference after the 3-0 loss. What do you guys notice? Okay, what do you guys notice after? So it's just going to be a few. I'm going to play for 25-30 seconds. Okay, so just you can watch it. You can see where the question's being asked. Klopp doesn't want it. Okay, so here we'll just put on that.
So, I was going to say, just that has been a theme throughout the season, starting so slowly. I know you said you can't explain it, but do you think it is a mentality thing? Does it make you look at how you prepare for games? The fact that they can then start a game so slowly when you've had a whole week on the training field?
It's very difficult to talk to you, if I'm 100% honest. I would prefer not to do that. You know why? For all the things you wrote, so if somebody else wants to ask that question, then I answer it, and if not, you ask it. And then can you say it again, please?
It looks like the team's been starting slowly all season. Well, what's the reason behind that, do you think?
Yeah, that's true. We had that subject through the.
Okay, what did both of you notice there? The exchange.
He decided
sheer. Sorry, you go. Yeah.
You should go ahead.
Well, all I was going to say, he had no intention, no matter if he had just said anything, he had no intention of answering any question that was asked by him. And you can't turn around, and I know obviously Roy Keane comes to mind where they give out to journalists for reporting. But if you don't like what someone has written, that doesn't give you the authority in a press conference to not answer their question.
Okay, that's okay. That's one point. Okay, Andrew, what did you notice? What'd you take from
it? He's struggling. He's gasping for air. The only way he could deal with that was not ignore the question, because he wants to use this as an opportunity to show, look, I'm the one who sets the rules here, and he's not able to get a response. I think it's telling that he's not getting the authority and response he wants from the staff around him. So he's lashing out at the most visible people in front of him. I mean, that exercise saying, repeat the exact same question and I'll give a perfectly calm, rational response, is showing it is very specifically personal. And to be fair to him, he actually did say exactly why. He admitted that he was being petty and personal. I mean, it shows that he's on the edge of losing control.
You have to be incredibly frustrated to not be able to hold some line of professionalism.
That's it. And look, there's two ways. One, yes, he's unprofessional. Once he could just simply say, "Look, I'm not answering that question." Next. But what did he do? He said, and this is the thing that, and the English hacks, this is the thing they love to do. He said, if someone else wants to ask me a question, I'll answer it. So an Irish journalist hand up and he asks a question and he answers it. That's what as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh wait, hold on. Now I've had that in media interviews where, for example, in Lokomotiv Moscow, when I'd been critical of the behavior of the former coach, Yuri Seomin, and who he was hanging around with. And he's like, I'm not speaking with you. I'm not speaking with you. I'm not going to answer your question. And other journalists then stood and looked at me, and one of them actually said, why are you here? He doesn't want to speak with you. And I'm like, and I basically said, fuck you. It's my job to ask a question. If he doesn't want to ask a question, why is someone else, turn around and asking the same question as me? Simply because, if you're a great person,
it's a power play, isn't it? Alan, it's a power play, because by doing this, he's inadvertently, in advance, putting pressure on others to not ask questions that he won't like in the future. It's not about this question; it's about the future.
But even make it more clear than that. If journalists had any worth, they would say, "Sorry, that question he asked. No, let him ask the question." They should stand together, but they won't, because it's cutthroat. And even though they're all buddies, and they've all, trust me, they've all pre-planned what they're going to ask. They've all spoken about this, and they're going in to get Klopp. So this is the whole thing. And this is what really bugged me about that. It was like this kind of, well, we're all in for ourselves. And they basically, imagine that sitting there. That's like, that's, I don't know. Like, as I said, having been on that side when like other people say, like, just kind of look at you, go, oh, well, the hell with you. And then they go on. This is just wrong.
I think you could hear it in the Irish guy asking the question. It was like, God, he asked a good question. Like, as in, I'm going to ask it for him. But there was that kind of sense of, I'm just repeating what he said. Are you actually going to make someone do it? Now, because you can't see his face, but you can hear it in his voice.
Yeah.
There's one other detail that I've just remembered. The Irish journalist repeating the question, he left out one word, which was, let's be honest, the one word that really needled Klopp. He didn't say the word mentality. He said, can you explain why there's been a slow start? He didn't say the word mentality.
Again, these are fans with laptops. Yeah. These are the same fans with laptops who turn around, and when one of the people who was there, who was asking the question, had asked me about information on what they were using in terms of just caffeine. What were they on? And I said, here's the stuff, and here's the person who's involved. And nothing. And he was one of the people, when I tagged him on Twitter, said, hold on, now, come on, you know this, you've seen this. He turned around and blocked me. And I'm thinking, you piece of crap. So there's no honor among thieves, and there's no honor among these people as well. They do it for a living. I'm sorry. I'm annoyed with that. Okay, Arthur, thank you very much. He says I get it. Okay, I won't put what's been written, but I've seen it. It's very good. Arthur, I agree about English hacks. Okay, very, very quickly on about the Premier League. Liverpool, they're mid-table. I think Everton are going to be chasing them down from mid-table quite soon if Sean Dyche has his way. Is this a chance now, for example, for Tottenham to push on? Because Harry Kane was getting, Roy Keane was raging that he didn't leave and so on. But I have to say, I admire Harry Kane. I do think he loves Spurs. He wants to play with Spurs. But can they push on, Iseult?
Well, I suppose as a Spurs fan, we're realistic about what we consider pushing on. Are we going to be, yes, we won today against City. Are we going to be challenging City and Arsenal this year for top of the table? No. Are we going to end up in the top four? Yes. I'm confident in that, at least. Do I think we can now, on our day, give a really good game to any opposition? Yes. I also think, let's not focus on the fact that poor Conte was off post gallbladder operation today and so wasn't on the sideline. But if he has another gallbladder or can have one put in to have it taken out again, it seems to be good for us when he's not around. Today was I think what you said about Harry Kane is very, very important. Obviously, he broke the record today for most goals for Spurs. But not only that, but when he spoke afterwards, Harry is a man of few words, and the few words he puts together, no one's going to be quoting them for years to come as being some great literary commentary. But when he spoke today, you could see the absolute passion and delight in getting that record. And I think the only way you can explain it is that after all the debacle about the gentleman's agreement with Dan Levy and his brother and as to when he might be leaving, it now seems that he has come full circle and he's realised that Spurs seems to be the place he wants to be for the moment, and which is great for Spurs supporters. And I think he just looked very happy after the match today, which was great. He also, in his post-match interview, and I am going to give a nod to this because I loved it, that he was talking about his first game and his first manager, and then skipped on from Tim, who would have been in charge and given him his start in Spurs. And the only other manager he mentioned, he was like, and Mauricio and the other coaches. So clearly we've had a few too many in of late that he has forgotten all of their names, and no thanks to Jose. But I think it's great to see him playing the way he has. And it was a huge day for Spurs, because not only, we all know when Spurs go ahead, Spurs decide to be Spursy, and there is always a real risk. And there were certain parts of the match where it felt very much like they could go behind. But overall, as a team performance, they looked really solid. Emerson was really, really good throughout. Romero, of course, got a second yellow because we all knew that was coming, and perhaps not having Conte on the sideline meant he wasn't taken off as quickly as he would have been. We were lucky as to when that happened. It was interesting to see how animated, I think, as well Pep was, particularly when we had hit 5 minutes of extra time gone. He was like going absolutely crazy on the sideline and like almost laughing in that kind of demented way when someone's not actually laughing. They're just really like losing the plot. And for Spurs to go ahead in the first half and to manage to not lose it is a huge achievement in and of itself. And I just,
That's true.
it was a really good day to see Spurs, I suppose, living up to some of the potential we think is there.
Andrew, Arthur over in, I'd say, well, hi over in California. Wish I was there because it's bloody snowing here again. United to win the league. You're going to play Leeds twice in the next few days. It's big time for United, and United could push on for possibly third place. They won't win it. That's down to Arsenal and Man City. But this is a good time for United. It's good work from Ten Hag. It's good work from the players. And there seems to be a bit of a buzz around the club. But is that buzz short-lived? Is that buzz basically because maybe they're trying to play up in order to get a good buyer for the club?
No, honestly, this is the most positive Manchester United atmosphere has been for a long time. I think it's fairly clear now that Erik ten Hag is by far the most adapted, clued up, switched on manager we've had since Sir Alex Ferguson. He's got the players buying into what he wants to do. Some of the goals that Manchester United are scoring now you haven't seen them since the days of Paul Scholes pinging passes left, right, centre from the middle of the pitch. The atmosphere is helped by some of the new players. Lisandro Martinez just embodies that fighting spirit that I think he would be popular at any club. Everybody likes that. I'm going to put my head on the line for the club. There's genuine hope because not just because of the new players, but because of the existing players, how he's coaching them to become better. Luke Shaw has been arguably the most consistent player for Manchester United this season. This is the same guy who's been ridiculed by numerous managers for being overweight, for being out of form, for being written off effectively for a good number of years, having signed as a £30 million fullback years and years ago. Marcus Rashford has dipped in and out of form for a number of years. He's just arguably the form player in the league at the moment. I mean, he just cannot stop scoring. And I think the positive here is that because over the last 5-6 years, Manchester United have accepted they're not going to be genuine title challengers. Being near enough to the top two, that is progress, and it's a manageable progress. It's not we've got a wild expectation of actually winning the title. Mathematically, it's well within our reach. The defeat to Arsenal could honestly, had that gone our way, had we pulled it off, I honestly would have said we would be in the title challenge. I think we'll beat Manchester City's second spot at the moment. City have the squad and the history and the mentality to grind out in that boring mechanical way that Pep Guardiola loves. But once you get doubt into a mind of somebody who's so used to winning that they don't know how to cope with adversity, they can crumble very quickly. We've seen it happen with Liverpool, and we're starting to see just a few cracks here. By cracks, I'm not saying Pep's lost. Of course he hasn't. And he has wonderful players, and that squad should be walking to the title, and probably still will win the title, just. But guaranteed Champions League football is genuinely a good stepping stone right now. I think if we look behind the table, yes, Newcastle are barely conceding at all, and they look a very, very solid side, but they're not going to challenge for the top 2 or 3, I don't think, for a year or two yet. So title challenge is technically there, but I think that defeat to Arsenal is what is going to cost us an actual title challenge. But I think second place, and that would be absolutely massive if Manchester United were able to go from beginning of the season losing 4-0 to Brentford to overtaking one of the most mechanical, precision-led sides we've virtually ever seen in modern football. That would be some turnaround, and Ten Hag deserves an enormous amount of credit for that. So atmosphere is good, time is good, and it's not a flash in the pan, but it's not finished yet.
Okay, Cian Gilby almost next week. So Howdy, he says, thanks to Harry Kane for keeping Arsenal 5 points clear after our speed bump yesterday. Of course, they lost 1-0.
That's the only comment that could possibly wipe the smile off Esau's face right now. Harry Kane has just won the game against City, and oh yeah, we're helping Arsenal now.
We all enjoyed, as a Spurs fan, we all loved the fact that all the Arsenal fans today were like, look, we want Spurs. We know it. We know you were there with us today in the spirit, so you know.
Question, Frank, howdy. Frank we met in Budapest. I don't know where he is now. So
Frank, I think Klopp will walk. I don't think he'll be fired. I think he'll walk.
Yeah.
I think his pride is taking a battering. The more I'm thinking about that press conference, I actually hate seeing people look like that, because he just looked like that's not the Klopp. You want fiery, yes, in managers. You don't want someone who just looks like, it just bothers me. I don't know why, because it's not that I'm a Klopp fan. I just don't like people who look like that, because it's too close to an edge of something.
Yeah, he looked genuinely stressed. He looked genuinely upset. And again, he as a person away from football, even around football, as a person, he's a really, really nice person. He's a really good person. He's a winner. He wants to go to win. He'll do whatever he can. We've seen that when he blew the team up to get them across the line to win in the COVID season. How they kept going, it's unbelievable. As in, just with that break, it was unbelievable. And you could see how zoned in they were. And people now, and I will say this before I ask Andrew what he thinks about this, people saying, they're off the juice, they're off. No. This is not cycling off. This is just literally the wrong players gotten in, poor attitude from players, selling the wrong player. They should never sold Sadio Mane. Nunez didn't want Nunez. Just put it like, he didn't want Nunez at all.
No, fair. Nunez has some sort of weird curse on him. Let's not blame him. Someone has a Nunez voodoo doll with a little ball on a string.
I think that's the only logical explanation there, in fairness. But,
Andrew, okay, will Klopp be there at the end of the season, or will he walk?
No, I actually think Esau's nailed it there. I think it's a bad situation, and I don't think it's likely to change organically. Therefore, Klopp realises he's a smart man, and I think I've got to give him credit for being an emotional manager. I like managers who are not afraid to be emotional and build that connection with the fans and the clubs. Those are the ones who, in theory, should be able to build dynasties, not just a few seasons. He's not going to wait for this to happen forever. I don't think it'll go before the end of the season, but in the summer, I'd be amazed if he starts in charge. And like Esau says, he will walk, he won't be fired. Because you imagine being FSG and you being the ones who say, we are getting rid of the manager who has brought you success. Their stock is at an all-time low. That would put it in negative territory. They just won't. They'll be too scared to do that. Klopp will walk, I think. And I, quite frankly, much as I enjoy watching him melt down, I agree with you so as well. I don't enjoy seeing someone who has such talent effectively being wasted. I want to see what he can do somewhere else, and I think he will. Yeah,
it's just a question of where he can go from there, because it's, like German national team, I think he's too young, but he could do really good stuff. There's a lot of good young players coming through. There's no one in Germany who can afford him or would want him, to be honest with you.
There's one club I can think of.
Who?
I think he will go to Bayern Munich. I think Nagelsmann is slightly losing it, and it's going to create a storyline, and he's going to have anger, and it's going to blow up majestically.
The Bavarians don't like him. Man, this is the thing. It'd be like literally walking into. Oh God, no. Well, okay. We're going to have a very quick break back after this with some even more interesting topics to discuss.
Glad that the WRU are finally now saying we're going to stop promoting the singing of Delilah, because it's a very violent song. The lyrics are about killing a woman, and unfortunately on big match days we see a dramatic rise in the number of domestic violence cases across Wales. So it's good to do this.
Isolt, I heard Delilah being sung yesterday as Ireland were handing Wales their sheep back. It was a terrific win for Ireland yesterday. I didn't expect it to be that easy in the first half, especially. Tim and I were watching it, and he was delighted. He was like, "Oh, Wales are so bad. This is brilliant." I'm going, they weren't always like that, but anyway. And Ireland were very, very good. Delilah. From a female point of view, I mean, honestly, I only remember a few years ago a comedian joking about it. I think it was actually even Frankie Boyle joking about it. And I was like, yeah, that is kind of weird. Well, it's no Sweet Caroline.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, let's put it this way. The RFU, so the English Rugby Football Union, moved because, they can never put England in front of it. They like to just call it things like the Open, the RFU, Wimbledon. You can't say what it actually is. It's the English version of something. A number of years ago, because of obviously the links with Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, they stopped playing Swing Low, Sweet Chariot over the PA system. If you watched the England match yesterday before the Scots handed it back to them, they were singing it quite emphatically, and I think Delilah will be the exact same. The lyrics of Delilah, obviously the main issue in it, and I suppose I find it difficult when people go, it's a song about domestic violence. It's actually a song about a murder, to be very specific. He goes back and murders his partner who has been unfaithful, but there's a murder. There's no glorifying. It's obviously an act of domestic violence, but there's no glorifying of a continuing battered woman syndrome. And I think the lyrics of the song, when you stop and listen to them, are quite disturbing from that perspective. But by the same token, if we are to start going and looking at the lyrics of every song, and a friend of mine actually hilariously said to me today, she was like, the fields of Athenry will be gone soon because, it's about theft. And I think the difficulty is the bit of Delilah that people actually sing along to is the chorus. They don't know.
Why?
I knew the rest of the words because they're also sang by a boxer from Portsmouth, because it's one of their songs as well. And he sings it when he comes into the ring. And I knew the words, and I always thought, oh yeah, it's a bit of a violent song. And then I kind of didn't think about it again because people only sing the chorus. I just think we're going to get into a position where if we decide that we're going to have to cancel every song that may have an overture of some form of criminal act, we're going to be low on bloody songs. There'll never be a rapper making any money ever again. And I also think the WRU have a lot more issues with misogyny in the background they need to deal with rather than what's going to be sung. And basically, if you say to people, don't sing this song, they're going to fucking sing it. Like, you're not playing it in the PA system, I think we'll be all right. They're going to keep going. Wales yesterday, as you rightly pointed out, just to go back to the sports side of things, Ireland, the first half was a wonderful performance by Ireland. The first 20 minutes of the second half, not so wonderful from our perspective. A really good showing by Wales. Like, they showed what they're capable of, and obviously there were some silly errors in their play, but I think, let's remember, Warren has been back with them for a few weeks. I would think that after a few months of Warren, we will see a stronger Welsh side come through. There are also huge problems in the background with the regions, which I think he will be very good at dealing with because he has prior experience of dealing with the regions and bringing them on in terms of collectively focusing them on giving a stronger Welsh national side. There were flashes of very good performance from some of the Welsh players. I would mention in particular Rio Dyer, who I think is magnificent. Looking at England and Scotland, perhaps then I would be more nervous if I was an English fan than I would be as a Welsh fan, because I think Wales have a lot of ability to grow and improve. Similarly, look, Steve Borthwick hasn't been with England long. I would question as a side how much more potential he's going to be able to get out of them in comparison with Wales. And I don't know why I feel that way, possibly because I support a Welsh club team. But I think Warren has had a very short period of time, and I think he's a bit like Klopp. He's a serial winner. He's not going to want to be dealing with the band of losers at the end of the Six Nations with their spoon and their sheep being herded up a line with it.
Well, I mean, it is one of those. It is a strange thing. I mean, with the line again, this is. I think it's scrolled across the screen, but it's a song by Tom Jones, the Welsh singer. There's so many songs. Again, what I don't understand is when you hear rap songs and there's about like, kill my hoe, shoot my bitch, and then using the N word. I think they won't be banned. They won't be taken away because people will go, oh wait, hold on, you're racist if you don't like that music. But the fact that it's a permatanned Welsh fella singing about looks like Mexican kind of people, it's like, oh my goodness.
Opportunity to distract from some hugely detrimental publicity coming out from the WRU about their actual behaviours in the background. So it's kind of like, look over here, let's give out about Delilah, and everyone's kind of going, really? This is what you're going to make your big stand on, Delilah?
Andrew, the Chariots swung very low yesterday in losing to Scotland at home as well. I mean, I have to say, our special guest was going to be Andy Mack tonight, but he will be in next week.
Oh,
so
thank God.
Just so you know, and we were quite happy yesterday, I should say. We were and I told him, by the way, Andy Mack, when he's on, he will tell you. I can show the messages. I said, Scotland are going to win tomorrow. And him and his brother Stuart, Alan, meanwhile on planet Earth. I was like, yeah, they were a good side. I thought that they were very motivated, and it all comes out next week. But Andrew, I mean, England, genuinely, I think that they're actually building for the World Cup. The Six Nations is interesting, but they're just bloody players, or are they just bloody awful?
Well, a result like this is just the emotion gets in the way. Losing to Scotland at anything is sickening beyond belief. You look, that I would argue a lot of England fans probably care more almost about the Six Nations than a World Cup campaign, because we generally are not the best. We're not in contention to win the World Cup. I don't think many England fans genuinely believe they are favourites to win the World Cup. I mean, I remember watching the final against, was it New Zealand? God, how many years ago was it? And it was like boys against men. I'll be honest, they still had a young side. We've got a lot of changing players. Steve Borthwick coming in. I don't know how much his style is going to change. But look, I want to see a style of play, an identity come through. With Eddie Jones for so many years, it just became almost the Eddie Jones show by the end of it. It was always about his character, how he was getting the negativity coming out of him was just something that became a distracting sideshow. I think that the result like this is not necessarily, it's going to sound weird, but not necessarily the worst kind of result, because it forces you to think about, well, what exactly went wrong? How can we build more for the long term? No, I don't think it's horrible. It's sickening and it's horrible to lose to Scotland. And I'm amazed I've not been bombarded with messages from the special guest. Thank God I haven't. He'll probably hear this and give me 2 barrels tomorrow. But look, it's not the end of the world. I'm only saying this because it's the easiest thing to say when you've just lost to Scotland. But the World Cup is a different beast, and personally, it's a cycle. I'm going to look at it as a cycle. We just have to accept. It's almost like being a Manchester United fan for the last few years. You have to accept. Look, you've gone down a rung on the ladder. Just please, dear God, do not let us lose to Ireland, because I will definitely never hear the end of that.
No, definitely not. And look, the game's on next week, of course, a huge one. Ireland and France. That's 3:15 kickoff in the Aviva. That is like Saturday, and then of course Scotland against Wales and England against Italy. Now, Italy, of course, they ran France to 5.8, but Italy always start off well. We saw them when they really, when it was a Conor. Oh God, I just blanked his family name. Conor Eastwood, help me.
My God, Conor Gray.
O'Shea, Conor O'Shea, the ex-Ireland player who he's coaching. And they were very clever and innovative. We didn't engage in rucks and they were able to scare England off and so on. But Italy...
The rugby ref beforehand that Eddie Jones nearly had a nervous breakdown over.
Exactly. And I mean, England always start off well, or sorry, Italy always start off well. And then as it goes on, they don't have the pool of players. They start to get heavier beatings and they'll be basically finished in a couple of weeks. So I think England are going to catch them at the right time and build a little bit of confidence up. Or I don't know, that's what I reckon for next Sunday's match.
Yeah, and I think the French, like today's performance, you can't take much again. Like you can't analyze much from the French. They've also had, similar to the Welsh, they've had a week of a lot of developments in the background for the RFU in terms of they've obviously the FFO, or even they have had their main man has quit. So ongoing scandals in the background in French rugby, which obviously are a big distraction on the field. Also, I thought it was really noticeable when you had Ntamak come off today to be replaced by Jalibert, my favourite named player of all time, or Jelly Bear, as his parents should have called him if they were Irish. He came on to score the winning try for France. And I think when you see that kind of passion coming onto the field, it's enough to give a kick up the you-know-what to the player going off. And you could see the frustration of being substituted firstly. And secondly, when it was Jalibert who went over to score the winning try. And I think maybe that's what France need ahead of a game, which next weekend I expect we will see a very different French approach. And I also think, let's just caveat everything by saying, as much as we try not to detract from any team going into a competition, let's face it, if Man United are going out next week to play Yeovil, they're not going to be getting themselves going, these are a real threat. And that's the kind of level you're talking about. There's a huge disparity between the teams. It is difficult to psych yourself up if your first match is against Italy.
Yeah, and I mean, always, I will say, caveat this, I remember when in Croke Park, Ireland played France, the first ever rugby match in Croke Park, and it was a huge, huge deal. It's now over 15 years ago now. And the whole, was it 2008? 2007?
I'd say around 7. Yeah, I'd say 7.
2007. And then, of course, they played England a week later. And Ireland lost to literally last minute try, which broke Irish hearts. And Ireland were really, really doing well. But anyway, this sort of thing, I think Ireland are going to have a tough against France this week. France are an awesome team. With Thierry Guillery, of course, told us before the last Six Nations, said France will win, hands down. And we went with that. Very quickly, your tips for next weekend, Andrew. So Ireland and France. Andrew.
He's muted.
Yeah, you've done an Alan. Sorry.
I think you two will be smiling.
Okay. All right. Okay. Scotland and Wales.
Well, Wales, because Scotland beat us.
Okay, and of course England beating Italy. I won't even ask you about that.
Well, you don't know. I might be saying, well, you never know. The Italians looking dangerous, so let me all know.
Okay, Isel, your 3 picks. Who are going to be winners next week?
So for Ireland at home, I think they have a lot they can actually learn from yesterday, which is a great position to be in because there's lots of room for improvement despite a win. That's what you always want because they can see that potential. Scotland and Wales. Even though I'm more worried about Scotland as an opponent for Ireland, I think it'd be difficult for us to go to Murrayfield and get a win. I hate to say it. I actually think Wales can come back and beat Scotland, and Scotland's momentum from game one will be out the window, potentially. Third match, I see England winning, and, we'll all be being told that they're en route to win the World Cup and the Six Nations, whereas reality will be it'll be a semi in the second of those tournaments and hopefully around mid-table for the Six Nations.
Yeah, and look, if Ireland can actually win a knockout round in the World Cup, it would be just marvelous, absolutely marvelous. And Cian, thank you very much. 2007. Very quickly, because he'll be speaking with us next week. England would be good under Borthwick, and improve over the next while. Farrell Smith combination will be looked at. Mixture side, yeah. And Farrell was awful yesterday. And Farrell was It was very untypical of him. He was very poor. He also took a knock to the head. So let's see what is actually.
I'm just going to say, that's the combination that excites me the most. And if Farrell's experience, and it should be an axis to build upon.
Yeah, that is very, very true. Okay, very true. Okay, we're going to go just a very, very short break and come back because we've promised to get Isolt out and about early, so we will. So we're back in just 1 moment.
First of all, watch when it goes in. Seamus Kinney is inside in the square before the ball gets it. 3 out. First thing. Good block. We were standing up. Now there's Joe dies.
It was like an American football touchdown.
And he was the umpire. I think in actual fact he dived over the line with the ball.
He carried the ball over the line.
He's actually over the line with the ball.
That's like something.
That is a tragedy from 2010. My dad and my uncle, who were both now passed away, they were at that match in Croke Park. Louth in red playing Meath in green, local rivals, hated rivals. And again, you can, in Gaelic football, when you take a shot at the Irish game, Irish football, when you take a shot or when it goes into the goal, you can't, first of all, carry the ball over the line because then it's immediately to free out, and you can't simply throw the ball into net, which this guy did. There's 2 umpires on the other side of the post. They were looking at it. They saw what happened. The referee came in, asked him what it was. One umpire said he carried the ball over the line, and the referee said, "Doesn't matter, put up your flag." It was the last minute of the game. Louth were winning by 1 point, but Louth choked, in fairness, to a large degree. But anyway, what I want to open up is with this is at what points, Andrew, start to you. At what points do we begin to say we have to offer a replay, that we have to, turn around and do the right thing and to be the better person and say, look, yeah, it's not right. We shouldn't have won. And I'll start off with this example here. This, of course, is Manchester United and Sheffield United in the FA Cup when a throw-in was thrown back, and basically it was because of a cultural mix.
They put it out because he was injured, and they expected it to be thrown back. Then was it Overmars? Overmars scored it, I think.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it went up, and of course the players were kind of, wait, hold on, this is not right. There's an Irish keeper standing there as well. At what point, Andrew, do a manager and a team and a club, or an outfit, they have to say, listen, hands up, let's give a replay and force the matter?
Could or should are 2 very different questions. It should be, I think it should be written into rules that it is allowed if both clubs agree. But the problem with that is, how often are you ever going to get 2 clubs agreeing to something like that? Because one will feel like the aggrieved party and demand it. One will think, well, we've got to waive it. We're not going to give a result that favours us away for free. So, I mean, could you honestly imagine that delightfully mannered manager who was in charge of Arsenal at the time, seeing an incident and thinking, you know what? Yeah, let's be good moral guardians of the game. Yes, it should happen. It should be a possibility. But the way football is, or the way sport is in general, I would argue, unless it's codified, teams aren't going to do anything like that. And how on earth are you going to codify? You must replay an entire game, especially with the level of scrutiny we have nowadays, not just with VAR, but the amount of coverage, the amount of replays that the entire world sees within seconds, whether you like it or not. So, I mean, replays, morally, it's a no-brainer for something where, because it's something like if you send off a player for something like that, that's irrelevant. The game has stopped, the momentum has changed, the mentality has changed. You simply cannot carry on where you left off from that moment. The only fair thing in a lot of examples like that, for example, would be to replay, but it's just never going to happen. It's never going to become a law where, if it is, well, because it's a moral question, because it's not really a codified question. It's not like, a goal was scored and it shouldn't have been allowed. The rules as they are at the moment, if the referee hasn't seen it and reported it, it just simply, you can't do anything about it.
But this is beyond that. This is about when you know that it has happened. Like the one with Loudon, everyone afterwards, they admitted it. And when they asked, when the question was asked of the what's called the Meath County Board, who look after Get Meath, they're like, will you like offer replays? I said, oh no, we're prepared for the next round of the championship.
Well,
and I mean, it was
no, you ask any team that question, not one single team say, yes, we think we should replay it, even if they know that it's never going to happen. I just
then I would say in team sports, then the moral the morality is in the toilet, because I'll
absolutely.
bring these up. If in boxing, there's many times when there's been a really bad decision. I've had one where I got a decision which, honestly, in an amateur fight, where I was like, I don't think I was certain I didn't win the fight. When my hand was raised, I was like, oh, I won that. Now on the video, when I watched it back later on, I thought, oh no, I did. It made sense. I did score more. It wasn't on the computer point scoring; it was on the cards. But in boxing, it's a normal thing to say, if you get a dodgy win or something that the fans are booing over, you immediately say, we're going to do this again. And it's beyond money. You're not thinking of money at that moment. Your brain has actually been bouncing around your skull.
I think there's a different level of pride, and maybe it's because it's boxing, maybe because it's an individual sport. It's like you don't really want to be told for years to come, which people will tell you for years to come, that you stole a decision or you robbed a decision or you won on the cards, but realistically, did you win? And I suppose Taylor Catterall, when that happens as a second fight, it's been currently Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall, their second bout is due to happen. It's been postponed due to an injury to Josh Taylor. But it's about pride. It's about the fact that Josh Taylor, I don't think, wants to be a fighter who everyone is saying, well, you won it technically, but did you really win it? And I think it's a pride thing more than moral compass, certainly. I think when it comes to team sports, and I suppose we have to look at I think there are a number of factors as to whether or not you have a replay. You need to look at when the event took place. If it's part of a round robin, does the outcome of a questionable decision negatively impact a team's ability to go forward in the competition? Is there the space and time to have a replay? And is a replay a fair reflection of what has gone on? So in the context, I suppose, that I'm thinking of, and I'm sure you are too, is the most recent decision where the GAA are trying to decide whether a final should be replayed, where one team in the dying minutes of the game had an extra player on the field. And at that point, you have to go, if something happens near the end of a match, there is a really good opportunity, if both teams are aware and the officials, to make quick, decisive call and say, right, guys, this may not have impacted the overall event. We cannot say either way whether this resulted in you having an unfair advantage on the field of play. We don't think you did it deliberately. However, let's all stop for a second. You had that advantage, and this was a final, which means the season ends here. So as a result, you have nothing else to be doing with your bloody time unless you're going off on holidays, which is one of the things we're hearing bandied about, because one of the teams is a much bigger team. Half of them are gone on their holidays already after winning the final. So you need to look at this, and if for an amateur sport, which the GAA is, on the highest stage for most players will consider winning a Club All-Ireland a fairly significant thing because it's with your own community. From a moral point of view, should there be a replay? Yes. From a logistics point of view, can you do it? Well, it's the end of a season. You should be able to do it. And the reality here is, in this instance, it's in the bloody rules. It's there in black and white in the book, as the man would say. And I think what you have to do is, with sports, when you're deciding on things like replays, you do have to be fair and look at the situation. If it's a meaningless game somewhere at the start of a season, there's opportunities for teams to work through it and without a replay and not adversely affect the score.
Yes.
But sport is, at its essence and at its purest, meant to be about fairness. And I think it's not on the teams to take responsibility for officials missing things, but it is on the teams to, at the very least, try and hold themselves up to a higher moral stance. So if the officials say we're not calling for a replay, they say, look, we would be happy to play one, but it hasn't been sanctioned or called for. If it's called, you need to stop and think.
Look, you're dead right now. I mean, there is a difference, again, we'll say that, between a knockout competition or knockout stages and a league. And that's what we have to, we can draw the line. Very, very quick, very short break, and then come back with the, we'll have one more excellent topic to come up with, and Isa will be well set for this. So back in just one moment.
Da 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 da! It's the motherfucking day of the.
Okay, I'm sorry, I had to do that again because, of course, now we're on to this one. Isel, straight away with you on this. Conor McGregor has offered to pay €500,000 worth for security for Katie Taylor to have her farewell. Well, we believe her farewell fight. I don't think it will be her farewell fight in Dublin. It's very magnanimous. It's a great way to move some money around, but he also is going to fight again it hasn't been said exactly when, but he will fight in the not too distant future when Dana White basically announced it.
Yeah, so obviously him and Michael Chandler are joining for the Ultimate Fighter series, where they will also be coaching during it. So that has been the big announcement. In terms of Conor McGregor, as much as I have over the years, my view on Conor and some of his actions I find really, really deplorable. The two things which Conor, I suppose, has built some recognition for being quite a good person in Ireland at over the last few years was, and again from personal experience of family, friends, he was sending people around the country delivering PPE when they couldn't get it anywhere else and couldn't get it from the HSE during COVID. So there is some form of moral compass somewhere deeply buried in there, and he has shown that before. And I think in the case of Katie Taylor, I don't think Conor McGregor's ego is so big that he doesn't recognize that Katie Taylor is our most beloved and biggest sports success story, because her whole story is positive. There is nothing that anyone goes, let's drag up that skeleton from Katie's closet, because they aren't there. She is just a genuinely wholesome, lovely young lady who has brought not just Irish boxing, but women's boxing to a different level of audience. And because of the way she behaves, because of the fact that she doesn't talk in the way some boxers do, because she doesn't smack talk, she's a great example for young athletes, male and female, coming through, of how you can behave in such a way and reach such a high profile. I think a lot of people have been giving out about the suggested level of cost for security in Ireland, and anyone who's saying that wouldn't be the level of security, we are currently getting to the end and have reached the end of the Regency trial, which was a gangland feud started at a boxing weigh-in in Dublin, and it's the last time that professional boxing on that scale has been here. I also think we have to factor in that on the night that they are suggesting having Katie's homecoming fight, which was announced last night in the ring in Madison Square Gardens in the small room where her opponent, Amanda Serrano, had just won her bout. But the night they're suggesting is a night when it's the Saturday of a weekend when the ECPR Cup is there on the EPCR even, is there on the Friday night in the Aviva, and on the Saturday the Heineken Cup final takes place in Dublin. Now, Dublin cannot accommodate 14 rugby fans who are going to be filling the Aviva, so 51,000 people on each day, plus 80,000 in Croke Park. So we'll wait and see what happens there. But I think the gesture from Conor comes from the right place. I think Katie deserves a huge homecoming. And I suppose, I know, Alan, you and I were back and forth on whether to fill Croke Park. One thing I will say, and it's just a very quick anecdote, Katie Taylor was the co-main event or the co-headline event on the night when Anthony Crolla fought his last fight in Manchester. Anthony is a Mancunian, very, very popular, would have always drawn good numbers to his fights. Katie's fight ended, and I got the fright of my life, because I'm a big Crolla fan, because I'm not exaggerating, 3/4 of the audience, and the audience was young, it was female, it was families, got up and left. And I was kind of there going, they were all there to see Katie. They travelled in huge numbers. There was a huge Irish crowd, and it was all families. So if you multiply that out and add in the corporate side, add in the people who won't generally travel to boxing, but they'll go to that because it's such a big event, I think she sells out Croke Park. And I think we should all be hoping that that's the event she gets, because I think the Three Arena would be a really bad look for Ireland as where we bring a national treasure like Katie back to, because it's too small, it's not a homecoming for her. What she's done for women's sport in general has just been absolutely huge. And it would have been, in a weird way, it would have also been lovely if the Aviva had been available on a different weekend, because obviously she played football for Ireland as well. So there's a synergy there in what could have gone.
I mean, she would then we'd hold it in Talca Park because she played there quite often, but that's too small. Even for boxing, it's actually quite a great venue. But anyway, I will say two things with this on Katie is, of course, she's, her dad Pete, who had been coaching for me. There's a lot in the family background. Also Katie as well. There was times when things were going on around her that she never spoke out about. Again, that's a child and a father. So when she sort of said that, my dad was creeping around young female boxers, she didn't. But at the same time, again, child and father, and she suffered for that as years have gone on. Another small one on that is that this is ultimately sports washing by Conor McGregor if he does this. This is sports washing at its finest. It's reputation washing. But at the same time, as Isel said, and I've always said, as much as I would criticize the man, there's stuff that he does behind the scenes that he never gets credit for, that he doesn't want credit for, that he doesn't say a word about. Isel's great bringing us up about PP. She's mentioned on Twitter as well. I'll say from a family member where he went.
There are other things done hugely generous acts that.
I mean, exactly. And he doesn't look for publication. And he is the greatest self-publicist going, but there's times that he's done things like going to, greet, for example, a young Down syndrome man who was suffering from severe depression. And he went to visit him at his place of work and joke with him and the whole lot and help him, and actually even pay for a small operation that the guy needed that the family was struggling to try and pay for. And of course, in Ireland's health system, which is a disaster, this was mostly. So this is what Conor McGregor is. Andrew, on this, this is it's huge for Ireland, for Irish pride as well. How does this line up? And I mean, how do you feel about it? I mean, with Conor McGregor, because you've spoken to him before, taking care of it.
I mean, it's well, like he sort of says, Katie Taylor, Croke Park. I mean, it just screams absolute blockbuster. Could you imagine the atmosphere and the noise in that place, the goodwill? And I would be quite happy. You mentioned in passing sports washing. I don't like using that phrase, but I would happily forgive people if they jumped on the back of it, if they made an event like this happen, because of exactly what you sort of saying about Katie Taylor's character. It's not just her achievements in the sport, but that's the sort of figure that really should be put up on a pedestal. That's the sort of person who should be given an absolute blockbuster fight at Croke Park. I mean, the costs involved, the main thing from a slightly outsider's point of view, the main reason we've been given, and I'm not saying it is necessarily the key reason behind the scenes, but is the cost of security. Now, one thing I find quite remarkable is that it? That's the only stumbling block? You honestly telling me if you really squeezed every penny out of VIP ads, promotion, you could make €500,000 just like that? I don't believe that for a second. So I'm sure there are other factors. And like you mentioned around that weekend, like you mentioned with the other events going on, that is quite a significant undertaking. I would like to back up what you both just said about Conor McGregor's offer. I mentioned to you guys in the chat, do you think this is him going for a bit of self-promotion or not? And I thought for a second about it, and I thought, much as he does self-promote, he does promote Katie as well. He does believe in
always.
Causes. Yeah. I mean, he's a lot of what he has done in character is deplorable, perhaps, but at heart, he loves sport. He loves his country. He loves his brand. He is an Irishman. You know, the symbol he carries, and he would love more than anything. Even if, yes, he is pictured with his arm around Katie in pre-fight or ringside, whatever it is, fine, because she deserves it. I'm certain something is going to happen now because there's too much attention on this issue. Exactly what will happen, I don't know. But I mean, how on earth it could not be? It would be a bad look, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Like you both know, it would be a bad look for Ireland if you cannot give your greatest sports star a stage that she deserves.
I also would say, like, it's going to cost. I think people have this perception that and I don't know why, but all week, everything I listen to seem to be discounting the fact that when you go to boxing, your seating costs are tiered. So the cheapest seat in Croke Park is going to be, for argument's sake, 150. Your most expensive is a few grand to be ringside. They're also not. What I do worry about is that the cost, not of going to the event, but the cost of staying and the ability to stay in a city that is already hosting 2 major sports events that weekend. It's not like people forget that. And like, I don't know, maybe Eddie seems to be a little bit unable to comprehend this, but this isn't like Wembley where people stay near Wembley, but you've hotels all across the city. Will pack out Dublin City, and then you have families who would be travelling up. They're not going to drive back at 3 a.m. in the morning because boxing doesn't finish at 9 o'clock.
No. And I mean, if it's going to sell in America, it's going to have to be at a late enough time. But I will say that it can't be too late because of around the Croke Park residents, the people who live around Croke Park in the centre of Dublin. It can't go on after a certain point. It needs to be finished by midnight.
But there's an existing. It's not, and I'm sorry, I'm going to labour this point because it annoys me so much. The rugby is not something that was fixed in the last 6 months. It's over a year of being confirmed. Dublin were announced, I think we're talking longer than 18 months ago, as hosting this year.
Right. When I was home, and before we met back in Blanche, myself and Tim were at the Leicester match, and they were announcing it. Get your tickets now, book it. But let's be honest, if you're hosting in Dublin, and it's going to be hosted in Dublin, okay, at any time, and you have 20, 30, even 20,000, 30,000 people coming from abroad, which, okay, just 10,000, that's still a lot. If you've got then people from, what we say, down the country coming up with kids, with families coming, and they're going to be spending 2 hours on the road, there's nowhere to stay in Dublin. There is nowhere to stay in Dublin. Iseult and Andrew knows, we discussed this when I was going home. Even going an hour outside to stay in a youth hostel, and the cost of it is outrageous. Partially, this is down to like 45, 50,000 Ukrainian refugees who've come in. It's also down to refugees or migrants, or whatever you want to call it, who are going into Dublin, that they're being just shoved into hotels. And it's also because a lot of hotels are now operating as not de jure, well, as I like to say, but de facto living places for people who can't afford to rent an apartment or afford to rent a house or a room in Dublin. So they're actually living in hotels. And I know people who actually live 4 nights a week. They usually Monday to Thursday night and check out on the Friday, live in a hotel, and then go home. Like, these are students then who go home to their parents in the country at the weekend because they can't afford to rent even a bedsit. A bedsit basically is like that. If you're a bed and you have a sink and you have a little cooker in your room. Sorry, Andrew, you're going to jump in.
Just one thing's occurred to me. Even I am fully aware of the housing crisis in Dublin and Ireland. Even I know how expensive it is. I'm aware of that. But the Heineken Cup final being hosted in Dublin, this will be in the Aviva, the Heineken Cup final, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Aviva has what, 45, 50,000 capacity?
About that, yeah.
51.
Okay, so 51,000 at the Aviva. Croke is 80. So, okay, let's assume Katie would be a sellout and there's another 30,000 people to accommodate. Okay, that is a huge difference. I do accept that. But Heineken Cup final, there's still 50,000 people you're accommodating. And the Heineken Cup final is, I'm assuming there's going to be at least a day or two of, I don't know, media appearances. The teams won't just fly over on the day. That's a fairly major thing. And if Dublin is able to host the Heineken Cup final, then surely, yes, it is extra. It will be more. I get that, but it's not an absolutely enormous amount extra. And then this is the part that gets me. Just like Iseult mentioned, when choosing the date of this, Eddie is clearly not completely stupid when it comes to promotion. Anybody with half a brain cell knows that around the end of May is the end of a lot of season. There are going to be lots of things. Don't pick right at the end of May before you've checked what else is going on. I could have Googled it. If I was organising this and I was thinking, right, I want it in Dublin, good. What else is going on in Dublin around that time? That's the very first thing I'd do. I'd Google it. You'd find Heineken Cup final. You think, hang on a minute, might that be a problem? I think choosing the date is, I'm a bit frustrated about that. I don't quite get.
Okay, Isel, we'll end off with you because we need to jump out in a moment. I've been watching the time. So, okay, Isel, go ahead. Last word.
As well is, if we're going to discuss the 2 nights of rugby that are in Dublin, the 4 teams, that's also a huge Garda operation that's already in place. So if your security costs are high, it's because your policing costs are less than they normally would be because all your police are already on a pre-existing operation. So your security is also taking the place of coming in and coordinating what would normally be a Garda run operation to get in and out of a stadium. It's absolute madness. And I will be delighted to see Katie get her homecoming. I hope it's what she deserves, but I also am just incredibly frustrated at how this has gone about.
Agreed. Look, on that note, we're going to end off, and I just say that Arthur, go take Chachi for a walk. And Arthur actually wrote in, and we've actually got some very, very nice messages in saying, love the show, get it on, can we get on twice a week? Intelligence, Cody is great. She's a tough cookie, very good. And that's, yeah, nice. Verona's also said, like, this is great. Very quick one, of course, Bengals are out. They lost last week, so Super Bowl next week. Well, look, it's just showing their finger. Quick yes or no from both of you. Will, because he said you've been over actually at an NFL game in London. I'll ask you first, Cecil. Will there ever be an NFL team in London?
Yes.
Andrew?
I think.
Yeah, sorry.
There will be a team that decides to franchise itself to London for a considerable period or a season.
Okay, Andrew?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely nailed on. It's all laid on a plate for them. Everything is in place except doing it. Yeah, the market will be huge.
Yeah.
Oh, it was they did it so well in London, and they've done it repeatedly so well.
Yeah, I have to agree with that because you can do it in Germany, you can do it in London. If you do it in Frankfurt, the fans are there, the base is there. If you do it in London and Frankfurt are 2 places for me that could sell it out, and they have the stadiums as well. So there we go. On that note, say, Isel, Cody, thank you very much. Talk with you, of course, next week. Andrew Flynn, thank you very much. Talk to you next week as well. And on that note, say thank you again to all of our viewers who have interacted with us tonight. And, you know, thank you very, very much. We had a lovely show tonight. Really, really glad. And Isel's already gone. So I will go out into the good night or the snowy night. Actually, I won't. I'm just going to make a cup of tea and then go to bed because I'm going for work in the morning. So until next week, I'll say thank you very, very much for joining us tonight. Take care of yourselves and each other.